Imagine that the states were occupied by China. Imagine that defendant Ben will put you in a lineup. Imagine that you got gunfire instead of cryo. Imagine that they dumped you in a ditch with your daughter.
I'm Brian Yennis for FoxNews.com, and that was Peaceful Revolution by hip-hop artist Tall Paul. We're so used to hearing about Native American messaging only when it intersects with more mainstream headlines. But Native American hip-hop artists are challenging and changing that. Native American rappers are using their music to push back and sound off not only against decades of exclusion and underrepresentation from the United States government, but also against problems within their own communities. And here to talk about it are two Native American hip-hop artists. We'll begin first with Paul Wennell Jr., who represents a new and growing generation of hip-hop artists. And then we also have one who's been in the game since 1991, Gary Litefoot Davis. Thank you both for being here. Very much appreciated, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Let's start off with you, Litefoot. You've been in this since 1991. You're credited for being really the first main Native American rapper. You're Cherokee. Explain to people why you got into rap and what message you are trying to really portray out there.
Well, I think from day one it's about trying to get representation and let our voice be heard. And, you know, for me, music was a medium, a vehicle to be able to carry that forward and get that done. It was important to be saying something. And, you know, when I looked around, especially at that point in time, I didn't see anybody on radio, on TV. We weren't in control of the narrative. And I think it was really important for somebody to start doing that. You know, it seemed like the media would embrace it whenever it would be something negative, but at you know, at the same time, what was being done to cure some of those ills, and were those negatives really negatives in the sense that, you know, what do you expect to happen when people are put in a situation to basically survive with no real means of support? And so I felt that you know, I maybe could be one voice that could make a difference, and it's become the foundation for so many different things that still and yet nothing's changed. You know, the struggle continues, and we got to keep fighting to get our voices heard.
So, Tall Paul, you got into this game pretty well, 2009. I mean, you really started this off as, I believe, as a hobby, and then you really started getting into it. Explain to people why you started getting into the rap game, and specifically what message you're trying to really send out there about your community.
I got into the rap game as a positive outlet for myself. I was making some lifestyle changes. I quit partying and doing things that were getting me into trouble. And also, in doing that and pursuing that outlet, I also realized I could have a voice for my community and use my voice in positive ways to speak out on things such as the Dakota Access Pipeline, and also to tell my personal story and connect with people in a personal way. I have songs that are real personal, and people hit me up all the time telling me that I motivate and inspire them, and that's really the ultimate goal, is just to inspire and motivate anybody who can relate to me.
Let's talk about some of the issues that are affecting your community here. We'll start off with Tall Paul, though. You mentioned the North Dakota Access Pipeline. It's something that we've been hearing in the news, but frankly, probably haven't been hearing enough about it, given everything that's been happening in the presidential election. And I know it's really starting to get really hot over there now. Explain to people why the North Dakota Access Pipeline is such a big deal for your community, and why it affects not only why it matters to Native Americans everywhere.
It matters because pipelines burst, they pollute water. We have a small amount of fresh drinking water on this planet. So we're trying to set a new precedent, make people understand that we don't need pipelines, we don't need fossil fuels to fuel our energy, to fuel our earth. There are alternative ways that we can do that wouldn't hurt the earth. But this pipeline was redirected from Bismarck and put down by the Standing Rock Reservation. And I don't know what that is. You know, if that's racism, why when the officials in Bismarck ask you to move the pipeline, you listen to them, but then when the officials in Standing Rock ask you to do that, you just ignore them. You go behind their backs and things like that. But the pipeline, you know, it's a threat to our water, and in that it's also a threat to wildlife, the animals, and the food that we eat. It's just an all-around threat to the environment, and it's important that people stand up against it, you know, and There are thousands of people out there right now, quote unquote, protesting this, but really they're there without weapons. They're there peacefully. They need more people out there. So if you can make it to Standing Rock, you definitely should. But yeah, it's a big issue. It affects everybody. If you drink water, it affects you, because especially if you live along the Missouri River, where do you think your water comes from? You know, and some of these police officers and military who are from that area are drinking water from that river, and yet they're opposed to us. When really, our people out there are really trying to protect everybody, including the families of those police officers and military members. And I don't think they understand that. But yeah, it's important for those reasons.
You know, Litefoot, it seems like every single time the community comes up in the mainstream media, it's about mascots, or sometimes it is about the pipeline situation. But I'm curious to know, from one generation to the next, you being a different generation than Tall Paul, a lot of these problems seem to be continuing. There doesn't seem to be much change. Can you kind of enlighten us on sort of what kind of improvement or movement we've seen in the last 2 or 3 decades, and what sort of needs to be changed still?
You know, let me say that I don't want to sound negative, for lack of a better way to put it. I mean, just as simple as that. I don't want to sound negative. We've done some great things in Indian country over the last, several years. There have been things that we've been able to get pushed forward, but they pale in comparison to the amount of opportunities that we could be engaged in. And I guess really what it comes down to, when you look at this issue with Dakota Access, or whether you look at the uranium issue with people getting cancer all over the Navajo reservation, or you look at different issues with EPA issues on the Navajo reservation again, with spills in their main tributary, you cannot just look at Dakota Access and the issue of Standing Rock and relegate this to a single instance without coloring it with all of the other issues that have been going on for so long. And I think what you're finding here in North Dakota is people who have had enough, people who are tired of rhetoric out of Washington, D.C., people who are tired with the Bureau of Indian Affairs and their bureaucracy and all of the things that they do to inhibit and stop things from happening. And I think you're then dealing with mainstream society's lack of knowledge about our trust obligations in this country, our treaty responsibilities, our right to self-determination. People don't understand the context with which American Indians, Alaska Natives have a relationship with the United States government. They look at us just like any other minority, and it is absolutely not the same, although the struggles are similar. But you cannot compare what we're going through on any reservation to anything that's going on in the inner city, because, for example, there's more people in Brooklyn than all of Indian country. But if you were to spread Brooklyn across North America, how could Brooklyn get together and do anything? All of this has been very, very thought out, relegated to keeping people on a reservation and doing everything in their possible possibilities in any way to get people to not be able to come up and move forward. And so I think this issue, when it comes to water and it comes to our natural resources, you go back to the Osages and head rights with oil back a lot of years ago. It's the same issue, and we don't seem to be getting any further. To answer your question more specifically, I think it comes down to sovereignty. If you ask people on Capitol Hill what's the definition of sovereignty, if you go over to federal agencies and ask them the definition of sovereignty, you ask us the definition of sovereignty, those are probably 3 different things. Until we can get that figured out, until we can maybe even look at amending the Constitution to better understand these things, we're going to probably continue to go through these same issues, but they're going to escalate.
Right. And real quick here, Tall Paul, if you can just talk briefly, if you can, quickly about your community right now and what you're hearing. You're sending your music out there. What are you hearing in terms of feedback as to what people are saying about your music in the hip hop community and in the Native American community? Because obviously it's resonating.
What I hear from people about my music is that it's inspiring, motivating, that it's positive. There's really no other way to put it. I'm seen as a role model, somebody that's looked up too. So I understand that there's a responsibility that comes with that, and I try to carry myself the best way that I can. But I also know that I'm not perfect and I'm capable of mistakes, so I'm honest in my music as well. But, yeah, what I hear from people is that I'm motivating, inspiring, and things like that.
And if you were in the elevator with somebody who had never spoken or had never met a young Native American or understood the issues that you guys are going through and sort of the positivity too, right? There's so much about your community that people don't know about. I'm sort of curious as to what your elevator pitch is when you talk to people about your community and your generation, because I feel like Native Americans feel as though they're misunderstood, and they have been misunderstood for many generations.
Yeah. If I'm having a conversation on an elevator with somebody that's unaware of us, I first, let them know we're still around and that there's many tribes that are out there recognized and unrecognized, that we occupy this land still across the nation. And, yeah, I'd probably highlight some of these issues, such as the Dakota Access Pipeline and mascot issues, all of these different things, and understand that when we're speaking on these matters, we're just coming from a place of love, you know what I mean? Like I said, then people out there at that pipeline protest, those protectors, they're doing that for everybody. That's not just for them. That's not just for their families or our families and our future generations. That's for water, which is what everybody needs to survive. So, yeah, if I'm telling somebody about Native Americans, I'd educate them on the history and where we're at today.
And Litefoot, your final words here as to where you think the community, I mean, your music has, for the last 20-something years here, more, your music has really had an effect on the Native American community and what people believe. What are your parting words for people out there who obviously they can download both of you guys' music on iTunes, they can go out there and listen to it. You've done a good job, you've done a great job, an incredible job of getting that word out there to helping people understand about a community they just know very little about.
I really think that, and Paul alluded to this, it's about inclusivity. It's about coming together. Look, from day one, our people have been about being open to other people, bringing people together. We still are, absolutely. And we need reciprocity. We need people to be the same way back. People just need to really, listen to the music. I mean, what a better way to get up to speed. With social media and mainstream efforts and technology today, we can access each other more easily than ever before. So listen to the music. You can go to Litefoot.com, check out the latest and as far as information. I keep my finger on the pulse of everything that's going on out in the community. You can watch a web series. One of the reasons why I'm doing my web series is to let people see what's going on out on the reservation. I mean, I could tell you about it, but why don't you take a look at it? We went to 211 communities back in 2005, 2006 on the Reach the Rest tour, and we went 54,000 miles to Indian country just so that we can try to build these bridges so that people can look into the community and the hustle and bustle of their everyday life and do our part to try to build that bridge and get that information out there. But it's a two-way street. We can do all of these things. We can, make music. We can do movies. We can do all these other things. But people have to come to show that compassion and show that love back.
Well, thank you so much for Litefoot and Tall Paul for being here today and kind of just talking to us. And again, thanks for joining us, and to follow both of these artists on Twitter for the latest on their work. Litefoot is at Litefoot, and Tall Paul is at TallPaul612. Again, thank you both for being here. I'm Brian Dennis with FoxNews.com.